Hey there, nerds. Jimmy Palmquist here with a movie review for The Black Panther. To be honest, I was a little nervous going into this because there's been a lot of good buzz, a lot of positive reviews, and that makes me nervous because now you got a lot to live up to. Whereas if there's no anticipation, let's go in and see what this is. Oh, cool. So that made me a little nervous. The good thing is I don't have any preconceived notions of the Black Panther. I don't know much about him in the comic books, other than when he tied in with like the X-Men or Daredevil. Those were the two I really pay attention to. So that was nice because then my anticipation of what he would be didn't exist. So going into the movie, I was curious. Obviously, we've been introduced to him in Civil War. It's like, how are we going to expand his universe? How are we going to make him a big piece of the MCU? Let me start off by saying Chadwick Boseman is perfect as T'Challa. I honestly can't imagine anybody else playing that role. I'm sure there's tons of people that could. I know once upon a time Wesley Snipes really wanted to be Black Panther, and he might have been able to be Black Panther, but I don't think he could have pulled T'Challa off as well. And Chadwick Boseman does both fantastic. His accent, I'm not into linguistics, to be honest. Once upon a time I was a history major. I studied East Asia and the United States. I really don't know about African history, so I don't know if his accent is accurate, but to me, it seems realistic, and that's nice. And as a side note, I'm watching this going, Chadwick Boseman, I know, obviously I've seen him in Civil War. What is he from? And I had a specific scene in my head of a movie, but I couldn't picture it. And he had just brass knuckles on, it was a phone with brass knuckles on the phone, and it finally hit me. And if you're from Cleveland, you'll love this. He was in Draft Day. He was the #1 draft pick from the Kevin Costner-led Cleveland Browns, Vontae Mack. And it was like, boom! Obviously, he plays a very American character in that, and I just couldn't gel the two until finally it hit. But that's a side note, only exciting if you're from Cleveland. So, him as T'Challa was perfect. The rest of the cast was really fantastic. Just fantastic. We have Lupita Nyong'o, who plays a love interest, basically, and she's really torn between her love of Wakanda, but her need to help people less fortunate in the real world. And we're not talking about people who are just down on their luck. We're talking about women who have been kidnapped and will be enslaved, sex slaves. Very honorable, obviously, but at the same time, there's this calling to be part of this highly secretive, highly technologically advanced society of Wakanda. And that was a very cool thing, is learning about Wakanda. I had just assumed it was a nation and T'Challa was automatically king because his dad, T'Chaka, was killed in the terrorist bombing in Civil War. Not at all. There are 5 tribes that make up Wakanda and basically have a say in the things that happen. One tribe basically went off on their own because they didn't want to have anything to do with the other 4, but we do see all 5 interact in this movie. So it's not a given that T'Challa is the king. He's got to earn it. And I really appreciated the rituals we were able to see in this movie. And again, I know Wakanda and this movie is fiction. I get that. But at the same time, not being familiar with African culture, and I do believe that they did incorporate a lot of African culture, it was fantastic to see the costumes, the outfits, the rituals, the dialect, the music, all of it infused into this superhero movie. I thoroughly enjoyed that, and it's not something I'm familiar with. To that end, other fantastic characters. We have Danai, Gurira. Another one who I'm sitting there watching this movie going, she looks so familiar. And of course, bam, it finally hits me. It's Michonne from The Walking Dead. And I hope when you see it, you'll understand why. In this movie, her head is shaved and she has different paint on. In Walking Dead, obviously she has a long head of hair and very dirty clothes and all that because it's The Walking Dead. I did not recognize her at all. Just a beautiful face, not to mention the fact that she's almost constantly angry in the movie, or at least resting bitch face, I guess what you might want to call it. But she is basically the king's right-hand man as far as Secret Service, being his protector. Whoever is the king of Wakanda, that's who she's protecting. And she's a badass warrior. Just a phenomenal character. Thoroughly enjoyed her. On top of that, we have T'Challa's sister, Shuri, who was played by Letitia Wright. I thoroughly enjoyed her character. So we're introduced to this culture, we're introduced to these rituals, obviously if they've been doing it for hundreds of years, but then we have this little sister who's like, come on, get on with it, let's go. And her intelligence seems to rival Tony Stark with the things she's creating with this technology. I really enjoyed her character. She was phenomenal. Then we have the matriarch of the family, Angela Bassett, who did a phenomenal job. I know it's tough to say, well, she was just a mom. No, she really was an emotional center for a lot of the things that happened in the movie. And then one of my favorite actors, Forrest Whitaker. Anytime he's in a movie, I really feel it adds some weight and gravitas so that it's just that much more important. This is a comic book movie. It's a goofy comic book movie at the end of the day. But when you have somebody of his stature in the movie and his ability, it's just like, okay, now we're in a serious movie. And it did the same exact thing in Rogue One as Saw Gurira. I just really enjoy seeing him in the movies, and his character was integral to everything that happened. Thoroughly enjoyed it. So basically what the story we have is a father-son story, a revenge story, all set within, well, I should say all, mostly set within the confines of Wakanda. We see a little bit of Oakland, California in the United States, and a little in Seoul, Korea. But for the most part, we're set in Wakanda, which is very cool, because again, I wasn't sure how they were going to pull that off with this secret nation. And then we have one of the best bad guys I've seen in a long time. I'm a huge fan of Michael B. Jordan. I think he's a phenomenal actor. I first came across him in Parenthood, which I really enjoyed that television show. Obviously, he was great in Creed. I'm very curious to see what he does in Creed 2, supposedly against Drago's son. But he is just a phenomenal actor, and I'm glad he got to stretch his wings as a villain. Because I think we're all honest with ourselves. A good superhero movie really relies on a fantastic villain, and Michael B. Jordan as Killmonger is phenomenal, and the way it ties in with T'Challa is fantastic. I don't want to overlook Martin Freeman. I couldn't fathom why such a big name actor would be in Civil War. I didn't understand how that was going to tie in, because he really didn't have a big role. Then we get to Black Panther, and he's got a huge role, and it's a very cool role, and I like how there could easily be distrust because of his role with the United States government, but he does the right thing, which is nice to see. On top of that, I did like the inside jokes that they constantly utilize him by saying, oh, the Americans. And the funny part of that is Martin Freeman is not an American. I enjoyed that inside joke, whether it was on purpose or not, I don't know. I thought that was funny to see Wakandans saying that. And then we have Andy Serkis. I enjoy when he is able to get out front and be the face of his own character. He's phenomenal as Gollum. He was phenomenal in Planet of the Apes. But when he's able to be himself as well, I enjoy that. And I'm saying that, he played a South African with a very cool accent. He was a huge badass, continuing his character's Claw, I should say that. And again, he was integral to the story. It really was. Everything that happened in this movie was integral to the story, from getting us to the beginning to the end. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. As you saw my review in The Last Jedi, there was so much wasted time, and it was a long movie. This was a pretty long movie, but there was no wasted time. We got what we needed to get to where we needed to go. And in fact, at one point I'm like, it seems like they have a lot of story left to tell. I don't know how we're going to squeeze this in with what's left. So I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. I highly, highly recommend you check it out. The characters, costumes, music, story, all of it was fantastic. I don't know what else to say other than I will get slightly political here. My daughter was 8 years old when she saw Wonder Woman, and it was really one of the first times she was able to see a female character on screen that was a superhero, and she could go home and imitate the actions of Wonder Woman. And she would cross her hands and do all that to block the bullets with her bracelets, and it was so cool to see. My son, who is 12, has been able to do that almost his whole life, because as you can see, I'm just a white guy. My son is a white kid, boy, so he gets to see those characters on screen all the time. And of course I love it because he can see that. Seeing my daughter, it never really clicked, but seeing my daughter being able to do that, I'm like, that is phenomenal. One of the things I love most about Black Panther is he is African, so he's black. So now, I would imagine, again, I'm just a white guy, what the hell do I know? But I would imagine that a lot of African Americans, black kids, can now look in the mirror, see themselves, but see a fantastic hero, superhero, on screen and emulate his actions. And I know it sounds dumb, it's just a comic book. It doesn't matter. It just gives you this sense of pride and ownership over something that you can emulate. And I wouldn't have believed it until I saw my daughter do it and saw how much joy she got from this superhero character, in her case, Wonder Woman. So yes, get politics out of comic books? No, I don't agree with that. They need to be there because it gives a lot of people hope that don't have hope. So one of my favorite things about Black Panther was that we have a very strong, awesome black superhero, and the supporting cast, very similar. All great, awesome, except obviously the bad guy. But he was awesome too, but just in a different way. So I highly recommend Black Panther. I'm going to go take my son to see it this weekend. I'm going to give it 5 out of 5 Nerd Skulls. Honestly, the only thing I could kind of give a little was some of the special effects just didn't seem as good as they could have been, but that's me nitpicking because the whole other movie was great. So go check it out and let me know what you think in the comments below. Black Panther.